Sean Marks, the general manager, giving you this quote on Kyrie Irving when saying that they want things to simmer down, and so they're not allowing him to talk to the press, even as he says, hey, I view all these people as coaching the team with me. As he gives public comment to, we run this team, he's now being told not to talk, which seems like a volatile position to put someone like Kyrie Irving in, who doesn't seem to want to be managed. And the quote is, we don't want to cause more fuss right now with more interaction with people.
That's weird.
I mean, how did this Nets situation get here? I mean, you could choose any one of the three that you want to choose from there.
That's a heady play, by the way, by Sean Marks. Imagine if we did that with Stugotz. Just keep them away from people. That's the answer. It's bizarre, but it's what happens when you've got a guy that you can't trust behind a microphone. That's where they're at, or behind a keyboard, or behind in front of a camera.
So you could have stopped that sentence that you can't trust.
Yeah, he's a mercurial guy, Kyrie Irving.
Well, you're calling him mercurial, and I was taken aback, even knowing what Kyrie Irving did and said. I'm not used to both Charles Barkley and Shaq, old-time players, calling someone an idiot on television again and again. I'm not used to it.
Yeah, I mean, well, you're used to it because Charles and Shaq call a lot of people idiots all the time. But in this case, in this scenario, for something as serious as this, yeah, I think what they're giving voice to is Kyrie, when he speaks, I don't know how fully formed the thought is behind it, right? There's a lot of impulse in there. And he says things that, quite frankly, could be resolved very easily if he just says the right thing, and he seems to say the wrong thing. And rather than take ownership and take responsibility of saying, yeah, all right, okay, maybe I was a little off on that, he doubles down, which is what we saw in the Nick Friedel back and forth in the press conference, and that just made things worse, right? He could have exited this whole thing by just saying the words, you know what? I was not fully aware of the full context. I hadn't watched the entire movie. And when it was brought to my attention, I was like, whoa, clearly I'm not that kind of guy. So I took it down and that's it. Much like the beginning of his Alex Jones answer, where he says, well, I don't condone anything that Alex Jones has done. And my heart goes out to Sandy Hook people. And if he just stops there, you're fine. But he has to end it with, but this is something he did in the 90s. And I think it's true.
I just believe that he thinks that he's smarter than what he actually is.
1,000%.
I think he's a doubler downer. Like
a doubler downer?
Like he has to. Like there is no retreating at a certain point. It began with is the Earth flat? Then he never backed off of that. Never said my bad. I'm an idiot. Just sort of kept going and kept going.
He did say he was joking about that.
Well, no, he said he was joking like a year later. And again, everything is always like Roy said. It's always with I'm just smarter than everybody else.
I'm just playing you.
This is not the Earth is flat. These are serious topics that he's dancing around, and he's not really answering questions that are totally fair questions to be asked when you send this kind of stuff out on your social media platforms.
And he's created real harm here. Like this is not a victimless crime. Like there has been an uptick in anti-Semitic rhetoric, like you guys talked about yesterday with the Jacksonville incident at the Georgia-Florida game. There's obviously the context of everything that's happened with Kanye West over the 2 weeks. And you can't just be like, well, he thinks he's smart and he's doubled down and like try to guess what his intent is. It doesn't really matter whether he watched the movie or not or believes in it or not. This is a humongous clusterfuck for the Nets because they did not come out strong enough. As soon as it happened, they should have come out strongly with actions to prevent this kind of rhetoric from being discussed in a way where it's like, well, maybe he meant this, maybe he meant that. It doesn't matter. Like, he's created harm here.
Jessica, that's a great point because that's the thing a lot of people are asking. We got a statement from the Nets. We got a statement from the Players Association. We got a statement from the NBA. And all three statements talk about how we don't condone anti-Semitism. And all three statements fail to mention why you're making a statement. The
Correct.
reason why we're having to say this is because this dude did this.
The NBA statement didn't even have his name in it.
None of them did. The Players Association, the Nets, the NBA, none of them mention Kyrie Irving by name. They just say, hey, we don't condone anti-Semitism. As if like, hey, by the way, it's Tuesday. I should let you guys know, by the way, I'm not good with transphobia or anti-Semitism or Islamophobia. Like, you don't make announcements like that without context. There's a context why they made those press releases. Why wouldn't they say because he did it or he said it? And that's the question a lot of people are asking is why isn't the league coming down harder on this? I think it was Charles who said we've had people who've been suspended for making homophobic remarks.
Charles said you have to suspend him. Charles said that the NBA dropped the ball by not punishing him.
I would argue, like, it's not worth really arguing, like, what's worse, saying a slur or posting the video, but I would argue that this is at least as equally dangerous, perhaps more, to post something that is quoting Adolf Hitler in this political climate on your social media page.
Misquoting, like attributing a fake quote to Adolf Hitler, which is next level, like galaxy brain. How do you really ratchet this up?
To a platform with 18 million followers. That's a premeditated action that is causing direct harm. That's not like a thing you yelled at someone during a basketball game that maybe you immediately regretted and shouldn't be in your vocabulary to begin with. How does one elicit a fine and a suspension and one elicits, well, we don't condone this? And nothing else.
And I think the connective tissue between some of these stories is, as you pointed out, Charles Barkley saying the league is sort of abdicating a lot of their responsibility on this. You go back to what happened with Draymond Green. They're like, that's a Warriors thing. We're not getting involved. With this Ime Udoka thing, he was suspended by the Celtics, but the league never did their own investigation. Why can you just transfer your issues from one team to another and there is no suspension? It's like the suspension never happened. Ime Udoka can become coach of the Nets after serving what is essentially amounted to been a 2-week penalty. Well, we don't even know what he did. We don't even know if should he be working in another NBA organization? We don't know that on the evidence of what happened. And the same thing here with Kyrie Irving. They're basically saying, we'll kick the can onto the Brooklyn Nets, and they've decided to do nothing.
Now, I think there's a difference though between those three incidents, right? What Draymond did happened in the confines of practice, and that is a team issue, right? What Udoka did, which what we know is it's an inappropriate relationship in the workplace, and perhaps some extracurricular comments on top of that, right?
But also being viewed differently, evidently, by the Nets and the Celtics.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying what he's alleged to have done is a violation of the Celtics code of conduct. There is no rule that says, like NBA rule, hey, by the way, don't have an affair in the office. There's no NBA rule against that. Not a blanket rule.
There's probably not an NBA rule either. Don't post links. There's probably,
no.
But probably not.
When you're dealing with some of these things, you have old people dealing with stuff as the rules are changing. There might not be social media rules on can we suspend in a collective bargaining agreement with the players. Can we suspend for things you've posted?
It is addressed in there about like representing the league and in your communications. You can be punished for this, and we've seen guys get punished. Eric Bledsoe for saying, I don't want to be here. And, we've seen guys get disciplined for things that they have said on social media. Players that have been going back and forth, talking trash to one another and cursing excessively. We've seen guys get disciplined or at least get a phone call from the league officer. You got to cut this shit out right now. But when you talk about an inappropriate workplace relationship, that is not the purview of the NBA. It is for its own employees at Olympic Tower, but it isn't, hey, what's going on over there in Boston? That's not their purview, so they don't have the jurisdiction to go into that. Now, when you talk about a guy tweeting out stuff, that is their jurisdiction because they do discipline on that level, and that's why Kyrie's situation is different, and it makes it a little bit more disappointing that there hasn't been any action by the league.